कहाँबाट चाहिँ सुरु गर्ने के चाहिँ पहिला सिक्ने because there are so many various different options. Any developer needs to know यो चाहिँ not just for beginner developers but for any developers of any level.
Hello and welcome back, you guys, to the 5th and final session on Webinar from the Future, but not definitely the last one. We'll keep you posted on that. I'm Pranjali Singh and I'll be moderating this session today. To those who have missed out our previous session, they're all up on YouTube on our Leapfrog's channel. The link I'll be sharing in the chat right now. Please feel free to go through them when you have a chance. So last week, we were able to look at tools for design and a bit more depth in different tools focusing on Figma. We also learned to analyze breakdown design and implement it. And today, we will be looking into a roadmap of what an aspiring developer needs to know before getting started with modern web and app development. We will be primarily focusing on front-end development, and we will also touch upon a few other areas like back-end and mobile development. Introducing our speaker today, he is Nishan Bajracharya, yeah, just like the singer. He's a full-stack developer at Leapfrog since 2017. His interests are playing video games and watching TV shows and movies. Before starting the session and giving the stage to Nishan, I would just request all the participants to keep your audio on mute. If there are any questions regarding the presentation, you all could list it down on the chat box. At the end of the session, Nishan will be answering them. So without any delays, let me hand the session over to Nishan. Nishan, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pranjali. My name is Nishan Bajracharya. For this webinar, I guess I'll be talking on mostly front-end development, and I'll give a few pointers here and there about where to get started, and I'll also talk about a bit about back-end development and mobile development. So talking about myself, I'm a software developer here at Leapfrog. I've been working for more than 3 years. I have to update this. It's been more than 3 years. Mostly experienced in React Native, Golang, and Node.js. And as she mentioned, I mostly play video games. When I'm free and at home at weekends, I'll be spending most of my time playing video games. So let's begin. Where do I get started? So I'll just switch between Nepali and English so that I can cover both the topics easily for everyone. So where do I begin? Usually, जो developer छ जोले चाहिँ एकदम initially starting out aspiring developer छ तिनीहरुले चाहिँ एउटा question usually questions गरेर आउँछ कहाँबाट चाहिँ सुरु गर्ने के चाहिँ पहिला सिक्ने because there are so many various different options. So initially, before we even get started with this or that, what any developer needs to know यो चाहिँ not just for beginner developers but for any developers of any level. Version control system भनेर हुन्छ, which is generally when we do codes we put checkpoints. So कुनै एउटा काम गर्छौं त्यसमा चाहिँ we put a checkpoint there and then we do a bit more work and then we put another checkpoint. यो चाहिँ किन भन्दा if we have to revert the changes, if we have to make sure that if something we write is not correct, we have to go back to the previous working version. So version control system, Git or GitHub are usually the most common ones. Bitbuckets, SVNs, there are other options too. But generally, initially, to get started, Git and GitHub would be more than enough. Terminal uses. So before, when we had, I guess, 10 वर्ष पहिला 20 वर्ष पहिला terminalमा चाहिँ त्यस्तो programming भनेर for beginning developers at least programming भनेर त्यस्तो terminal use गर्नुपर्ने त्यस्तो requirement हुँदैन थियो. पहिला चाहिँ एउटा editor खोल्यो or notepad खोल्यो त्यसमा HTML लेख्यो CSS लेख्यो browserमा खोल्यो it would be fine. But now, at least in front-end development and a few back-end development systems, just to get projects, we have to have some knowledge about the terminal. So Linux or Mac, CLI ma Bash, ZSS, Windows WSL, WSL2, Windows subsystem from Linux, PowerShell, CMD for the very beginning things. So terminal ma file kasari banaउने, directories or kasari traverse गर्ने, file read kasari गर्ने, write kasari गर्ने, something things like that. Not extremely complicated things, but initially science to kurahहरु चाहिँ हेरिराख्नु पर्छ. Next, text editors. Usually, as I said before we used to have just Notepad, and initially Notepad code go to, and then we generally switched over to Notepad++ to do a bit more complex programming. Now VS Code is one of the most popular code editors right now. I personally use VS Code myself. My Atom one uses Sublime Text uses brackets and various different options. IDEs or ones, for example, PHP Storm, WebStorm, Eclipse IDEs, but maybe not for web development, but still. VS Code and generally you would have competent text editors on it is more than enough. I personally would recommend VS Code because for web development, VS Code has a lot of different cool features that you can use. So the basics are version control system cost to कसरी काम गर्छ, we need to know about that. Terminal uses, basic terminal uses चाहिँ थाहा हुनु पर्यो, and we have to get familiar with the editors we use because code editors ले चाहिँ coding गर्नलाई एकदमै सजिलो पार्छ के, like syntax completion or कुनै ठाउँमा error छ भने error highlight गर्ने कुराहरु. So it's very helpful to start using code editors. So the roadmap. Your roadmap is very surface level look into what modern web development looks like in 2020, 2019, 2018. This roadmap has been working for about 4-5 years now. So just to start with web development, and I'll talk about what comprises web development. So web development we can choose between either going to front-end development or back-end development. So I would recommend going through one of these first, not both of them. And then every time I was saying certain level of competency, we can then switch over to the other one. Usually, if you are more interested in design, if you are more interested in building user-centric content, like web apps or interests, and like social apps or interests on, usually it's a good idea to start with front-end development because that's my saying. Usually end result cost of Dexa and how they interact with your application to sub-control granulsa. Back-end usually cost to user data storage and auto application your data costly analyze costly users. So things like that generally not that back-end data storing much, but back-end developer or usually from my experience at least, front-end test to interest design test to interest. So for those, they can get started with back-end development. But since I primarily focus on front-end development myself, and this topic itself is also about diving into front-end for some reason, I will talk a bit more about front-end development. Now, DevOps is a bit higher level than front-end and back-end development. So DevOps because server-side manage कसरी गर्ने, containerization हुन्छ, Docker कुराहरु हुन्छ, cloud services हुन्छ, like where do you host your applications, server कसरी manage गर्ने. So these things can come after we've gone deeply into front-end and back-end development. Generally चाहिँ back-end गरेकोहरुले चाहिँ DevOps मा switch गर्न it'll be much easier. But for a DevOps engineer to really properly understand how the systems work, they'll need to know both front-end and back-end development. Maybe पुरै coding गर्ने knowledge चाहिँ नचाहेर for DevOps developers, but कसरी काम गर्छ front end back end त्यो चाहिँ information important हुन्छ. So web development यो चाहिँ, as I said, the starting point. So यो चाहिँ के भन्दा to begin with modern front end development in 2020 2019 के चाहियो भन्दा initially चाहिँ HTML CSS and JavaScript lines. So HTML is the actual content you see on your web pages or your applications. So kunka layouts, 2-column layouts, grid layouts, there are lots of things there. Links are a form. CSS is what they actually look like. So kunai buttons on a button color, green saki, blue saki, kunai error messages on it, error messages, red mauni, things like that. I'm glossing over the important parts of it for now. JavaScript is the interaction that we can add to the application. The button click on the form incorrect information type costly handle things like that. So to get started, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are very easy to do. In JavaScript also, one of my recommendations to get started for those that have not really done any kind of programming, because JavaScript syntax initially straightforward, and another one, if I have to suggest, would be Python. Like initially, your starting point to syntax for JavaScript and Python are very, very straightforward. Maybe not exactly the same, similar, but to beginners, it's very easy to get started with JavaScript and Python, but that does not mean that JavaScript एकदमै सजिलो छ जसले पनि गर्न सक्छ, because if, for example, with CSS we can do lots more than just adding a few colors and styles here and there. यसमा typography को कुरा हुन्छ, color theory को कुरा हुन्छ, so कुनै कलरको कम्बिनेसन म्याच हुन्छ कि हुँदैन, ट्रायड कलर्सहरु हुन्छ, कम्प्लिमेन्टरी कलर्सको कन्सेप्टहरु हुन्छ, टाइपोग्राफीमा पनि कस्तो खाली टाइप लेटर स्पेसिङ कस्तो हुनुपर्ने हो, कुन ठाउँमा बोल्ड हुनुपर्ने, कुन ठाउँमा लाइट हुनुपर्ने हो. So there's a lot of things in design that you can do with CSS. And JavaScript, as I've mentioned here, cohesion हुन्छ, lexical scoping हुन्छ. So these are very, very complicated topics. So which for now, as a beginner, you will not need to know any of these. But once you get started and you get much deeper into JavaScript, in your knowledge, it'll be very difficult for you to really understand how it works internally. So JavaScript, to get started, it's very, very easy. But internally, there are a lot more things that you have to look into. So other few things you have to look into, at least starting from 2009, 2010, to where Node.js introduced by Patel. So what that is Node.js भन्दा पहिला चाहिँ JavaScript कुनै बनाउनु पर्यो भने चाहिँ ब्राउजरमा मात्रै चल्थ्यो. So if you wrote a JavaScript script, yes, you can only run it within a browser. Node.js ले चाहिँ के गर्यो भने त्यो browser environment भन्दा बाहिर निकाल्यो. So Node.js is a runtime for JavaScript, so it can run JavaScript code in platforms outside of browsers. So for example, in your terminal, in your desktop applications, in your mobile applications, and other stuff. And ES 2015 is a new specification for JavaScript. JavaScript was introduced, I think, in 1995, I think. And your 2015 was sort of like a revision, like syntax is changed, and everything is backwards compatible. So 1995 JSC that still works in ES 2015, but this just gives a newer, more straightforward syntax for you to learn. So modern development usually ES6 plus use. So I'll go latest version ES 2019, latest stable version, and there's always new versions coming out every year. But everything is backwards compatible, so everything you learn in JavaScript when you start up will still work in the modern app development. But for usually you'll find ES6 plus syntax, so it'll be easier for you to look into what they wrote if you know what ES6 is. So about front-end development, I'll give a brief idea of what front-end development looks like. Front-end app structures look like in modern app development. So server-side rendering concept. It's still server-side rendering is still there, but it's a lot less common now. Server-side rendering is like what's the server? Your server and any interaction going to user had to provide some input, maybe button click on the form on the and server later data into it will process the data and it will send out a new HTML piece. Now what has happened is server let's say your data linear receive a response part and everything we need to do, everything the front-end application needs to do will be processed within the front-end. So HTML pages are actually loaded, so CSS actually loaded. So and you users give input to the application using something like mouse or keyboards, button click on your key form and that is all handled by the JavaScript in the front-end side. So the application front-end download browser or some environment download and that JavaScript on the front-end side will process all of the things that the user wants to do. And then the browser JavaScript let's say for button click on the for form handle to process response result front end without refreshing the page or without changing a lot of things in the page. If your page let's say change your front end control it won't be controlled by the server side. So you're like client side rendering and this is a lot more common in front end developments these days. And your API front end or back end code development parallelly but they don't directly combine. Directly combine Java front end application back end application request request. So the front end application sends a request to server, and the server responds based on the request sent. So let's say list of users JavaScript front end server side list of users array or objects so this data storing or resource sharing scheme is called API. application programming interface, and this will also, I will briefly cover it a bit more later on. So as I said earlier, initially, where do I begin? There are lots of so many options what to choose for. So that's exactly what I'm showing here. JavaScript for front-end frameworks, there are so many libraries and frameworks for you to choose. And what you choose based on the kind of application you want to build. And also the preference of the library that you use. So for example, if you're using React, then React provides everything you need to do for your UI rendering and stuff, but nothing else. And Angular provides everything from form validation, HTTP requests, UI rendering, image manipulation, everything. But if you use Angular, Angular is going to provide all of the options for you, and users have to pick and choose what you use. If you use React, you'll have all the excellent options to handle your UI rendering, but you'll have to do everything yourself. I personally like React because React UI rendering is a very robust system, and I can manually configure whatever else I want to do. So for example, my API requests are going like specific system tag, and it may not be available in Angular, so I can manually find that in React. So there are other options too, like Vue.js. If you want to, easy, straightforward application bounce on Vue.js is very good to start with. Svelte is fairly new, maybe like 1 or 2 years ago, like your Ramari Aku. And Svelte is also similar to Vue.js, so there's a lot of different templating sort of concepts and separation of files here and there. So Svelte review and the HTML usually and HTML content inject गर्ने कुराहरु हुन्छ. React हामीले primarily JavaScript मात्रै लेख्छौं. Angular also it's much similar, primarily JavaScript मात्रै हुन्छ. Web components and Polymer are similar things, but they are much more native to the browser. Web components web browser natively available हुन्छ, and Polymer is like a library that enhances the web component experience. So you have a lot of different options to choose from. Generally, the most popular library that is currently being used is React for any kind of application. For enterprise level sign, usually notice Angular is much more popular because Angular has a lot better support for enterprise level applications. So it does not need to be Angular. Angular can be used for even the smallest of applications. React can be used for even the largest of applications. But it's ultimately down to the preference of the user and the kind of application you want to use. Pet projects, I would recommend React or Vue because they're a lot easier to get started with. Svelte, maybe, but not very mature, I would say. So you're saying it can take a lot of trial and error to get started with Svelte. So I can cover a bit more about React, Angular, Vue, the options to choose later on if there's a question there. For now, I'll move on to CSS. So, but the next big thing in front-end development is design. So, if you React, Angular, Vue, or keywords, let's say UI कसरी render भन्ने गरिन्छ, but कसरी देखाउने, the actual design part of it still has to be done through CSS, and there are many different options for that. One of the most common options is Sass. Sass is called a CSS preprocessor. हामी Sass मा code लेख्छौं, and then that gets compiled to CSS, and then हामीले चाहिँ CSS use गर्ने. So Sass let's say के गरिन्छ भन्दा CSS मा there are a few things that CSS cannot do quite easily, like variables. Now there's good support for CSS variables, but पहिला चाहिँ कुनै एउटा variables माथि save गरेर I couldn't use that anywhere else in CSS, but Sass provides that option. Like nesting को कुराहरु every element छ त्यो element भित्रको child element like styling गर्ने कुराहरु, that those kind of options are not quite easily available in CSS. त्यो यो भन्ने खोजेको हैन कि CSS cannot be completely used. You have to use Sass. Everything you do in Sass can still be done in CSS, but Sass provides a much easier way to write CSS code. So it makes the developer's life much easier to use Sass. There are other options too, like Bootstrap. Bootstrap probably is the most popular one that almost every developer probably knows about Bootstrap. Materialize is another CSS library that provides Google material design भनेर design principle sets up guidelines. So त्यो guideline follow गरेर बना component design गर्ने library चाहिँ Materialize छ. Bootstrap को आफ्नै एउटा design system छ. So Bootstrap and Materialize do those kinds of things, like button छ भने button primary button भन्यो भने त्यसको एउटा predefined style already हुन्छ, things like that. Tailwind is a bit different, and both Bulma and Foundation are also similar in that cases. Tailwind is a bit more different. Tailwind is a utility first library, CSS library भन्छ. What that means is compared to Bootstrap, Bootstrapमा चाहिँ component levelमै designs provided हुन्छ, so styles provided हुन्छ. As I said before, button को design primary छ भने यो design हुन्छ, secondary छ भने यो design हुन्छ, outline छ भने यो design हुन्छ, predefined हुन्छ. Tailwindमा चाहिँ nothing like that exists. Tailwindमा चाहिँ जुनसुकै डिजाइन चाहिँ one by one manually नै कन्फिगर गर्नुपर्छ. So मलाई padding, left को padding कति चाहिएको छ, right को padding कति चाहिएको छ, everything has to be manually configured through classes. I personally prefer Tailwind because it provides a lot more options for me to use as opposed to Bootstrap, जुनमा चाहिँ already predefined so I need to override the designs that they provided, which for initial bootstrapping it's a lot bootstrapping. For initial bootstrapping it's a lot easier to use something like Bootstrap or Materialize, but if you want like very minute configuration of your designs, Tailwind would be a better approach for you. And again, Tailwind भनेको Bootstrap सँगै पनि गर्न मिल्छ. Bootstrap को design थप्यो त्यसमा चाहिँ Tailwind गर्न पनि मिल्छ. But there can be a few conflicts here and there. So really depends on the kinds of applications you want to build. एकदमै straight एउटा configure गर्नु पर्यो भने चाहिँ Tailwind might be a good option. But if you want like something that's a lot more similar to other applications, to बनाउन पनि छिटो र डिजाइन पनि एउटा consistently एउटै हुने चाहेको छ भने चाहिँ Bootstrap or Materialize or Foundation can work for you. Build tools, linting and package managers. So Node.js ले चाहिँ एउटा 2009 मा आउँदाखेरि एउटा कन्सेप्ट के ल्यायो भने प्याकेजहरु चाहिँ एउटा रिपोजिटरीमा सेभ हुन्छ. रिपोजिटरी मिन्स एउटा एक ठाउँमा स्टोर्ड छ, and anyone that needs to use something in Node.js can take packages from that repository, add it to our application, and just run with it. So Node.js and Yarns are package managers. So these get packages from this single repository and add it to your application. So for example, मलाई date manipulation गर्नु पर्यो, time zone issue also. This is something that professional developers almost always have issues with. Time zone issues almost जहिले पनि आउँछ. So we're living in Nepal and we're building applications for the US clients. And so when we build it, हाम्रो के इश्यू आउँछ भने हामीले चाहिँ नेपालको टाइम जोन युज गरेर एप्लिकेसन बनाएर हुन्छ, बट सिन्स US टाइम जोन इज मच डिफरेंट, त्यो टाइमको इश्यू जहिले पनि आएर हुन्छ. So for things like that, we need to have options to do that. And NPM has libraries that provide that. Libraries भन्ने packages that provide that. So Moment भनेको टाइम package which anyone can import from the NPM repository and use in our applications. So NPM I think has like 1.2 million packages to choose from. So on anything you want to build with NPM or Node.js, you probably have a package that can do that for you. So it's a good idea to look into the NPM repository and look for the packages. Yarn and NPM do the same thing. They take the packages from that remote location and add it to your local system, to your local project. ESLint is linting. Linting, what it means is to enforce a certain kind of coding style. So for example, semicolon राख्ने कति spaces चाहिँ राख्ने हो, tabs versus spaces गर्ने हो कि के हो, to ensure that the project always follows a specific coding style. And formatting को लागि पनि एकदम straightforward हुन्छ. कुनै ठाउँमा error छ भने ESLint can show you that error exists there. Webpack and Babel are similar build tools that when you're starting out, you might not need to use any of these. Maybe NPM or Yarn is going to work, but you might not need to do ESLint, Webpack, and Babel. But once you get more deeper into the front-end development, back-end development, these will come a lot more using commonly used. So for now, just know that there's a lot of build tools that you can use, and these aren't the only ones. There are other options also available if you do not like the way that Webpack does things. And I haven't really said what Webpack does right now, but there are other alternatives too. So next, front-end concepts. So front-end, as I said, build tools here are cover going. Build tools are the things that help build your application, not from the coding perspective, but from managing your files, managing your packages, things like that, and how they are deployed to a certain location, things like that. Bundling, we have any project we can have thousands of JavaScript files, hundreds of CSS files. So all of them have to be combined into one single bundle, and that bundle has to be distributed so that other people can use it. So bundling is also done via build tools. routing चाहिँ कस्तो भन्दा once a page has been loaded to, let's say, example.com website छ भने example.com/login हुन सक्छ, example.com/home हुन सक्छ, example.com/about हुन सक्छ. So त्यस्तो routing कुराहरु पनि front end ले नै कन्ट्रोल गर्छ. So like before, when I think I covered in this slide, पहिला चाहिँ त्यो routing चेन्ज गर्ने कुराहरु चाहिँ सर्भरले नै कन्ट्रोल गर्छ. So त्यो route चेन्ज भयो भने सर्भरले नै एउटा नयाँ पेज प्रोवाइड गर्थ्यो. But now in front-end development, all of that is handled to the front-end application itself. So कुनै पेजमा राउट गर्नु पर्यो अनि त्यो राउट गर्दाखेरि कुनै डाटा शेयर गर्नु पर्यो, त्यो सब कुराहरु चाहिँ front-end को हाम्रो React, Angular, Vue-हरुले नै कन्ट्रोल गर्छ. I'll go into component breakdown in the next couple of slides. Responsive design. It's generally a good idea to always start mobile first. So that's sano devices ma paila design clear garden and design fix garden, and then we move on to big larger devices and make those design changes there. If your application is only going to be a desktop application and it does not need a mobile application, it's still a good idea to do mobile first. But त्यस्तो हो भने चाहिँ mobile first मा चाहिँ के प्रब्लम हुन्छ भन्दा त्यो mobile को लागि डिजाइन गर्न अलि बढी टाइम लाग्न सक्छ, and then switching that to the kind of design you want to desktop may take a bit longer. But generally I would recommend going mobile first, but it depends on the kind of project you're working on. Single page application, like I said before, एउटा single page एउटा लोड हुन्छ, त्यसमा चाहिँ multiple HTML फाइल हुँदैन, एउटा single HTML फाइल हुन्छ, अनि त्यसमा जे राउट गर्ने हो त्यो राउट चेन्ज हुँदैन कि त्यो पेज भित्र नै त्यो डकुमेन्ट भित्र नै कन्टेन्ट मात्र चेन्ज हुने हो. सो अर्को नयाँ डकुमेन्ट लोड हुने हैन. The same content loads if let's give you example, let's say users fetch गर्नु पर्यो, users fetch गर्यो अनि त्यो डिस्प्ले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो एन्टायर पेज रिफ्रेश नभइकन त्यो पेजको सर्टेड एउटा पोर्सनमा चाहिँ त्यो पपुलेट भइदियो. So it's so again very surface level. There's a lot more into single page applications. But as you go into front-end development, I think single page application like properly introduced by saying Angular version 1 decade ago. It was I think 2009, 2010 ago, and now almost every front-end application uses some form of single page application concepts. So it's a good idea to look into what single page applications are and how they work. So your component breakdown example, I'll give one. So you might have seen something like this when the designer provides the design mockup. So this is one project. If I'm working on, they'll provide us what the button looks like, what the text color should be like, what the color of the button should look like, what the outline button should look like. If there's a icon left ma cha ki right ma cha, how that should look like. Drop down or cost dekhnu parne ho, inputs and drop down or cost dekhnu parne ho. Select options for placeholder cost dekhnu parne ho. Chip components on to cost dekhnu parne ho. Checkbox cost dekhnu parne ho. They provide these mockups, and what a front-end developer has to do is they have to go to their project and they have to build it themselves. So I'll give an example using React.js. So something like generally we'll have some assets, some API connections here and there, and we generally say components for it, just separate a version. And if it is commonly used kind of components, I'm say common and folder bit. We define what a button should be, we define what a date picker should be, date bill, form elements, what each form element should be like an icon. So we define some like we'll say this is a button, this should be an icon, this is where the actual content shows up. So your syntax actually maybe you might not understand what it is if you have not done React, but and I'm not saying that this is the correct syntax that needs to be used. This is the correct way that should be done. I'm just saying that you generally commonly patterns in front-end developments. We'll have a separate location where we store all of our common components. So it's a common mitra. Usually, cost component or the component cost we generally find it. So your button now, if you need to use anywhere, we just take the values from here. I'm saying your button we'll point it there, and then that button will be used in whatever place we need. Okay. All right. So but now let's go a bit more into backend development, and then I'll go a bit more into other few things. So backend development, there are a lot of options, like I said before. Node.js, which is the JavaScript runtime, there's many options. So Express.js, Adonis.js, Happy, Meteor. Next.js is an MVC framework that uses React. So React, but I'm front-end my React, maybe not speak here, but React. The same thing can be used for backend development also. So Next.js is a server-side rendering application that provides that builds MVC for applications, web applications, and this much syntax we use React for that. So if you learn React for front-end development, you can again switch over to back-end development and use Next.js to do your back-end development there. Put a API level, then we can have Express for that. Express we can still do Express. So Node.js and JavaScript, there are many more options too, but these are some more common ones. Python, as I said, it's easier to get started, but there are also a lot more complicated things there. So Python, there are two most common frameworks like Django and Flask. You can choose any of these if you want. Java, Java is a bit more complicated and generally enterprise level a lot more common, but like personal projects and probably Java use it. But if you want, you can get started with Spring Framework. And for enterprise level, we have Java Enterprise Edition. So you can do those two. Database. Our database sign costly to data store can store or Kiko form store. Usually the most common one is MySQL. We have PostgreSQL, PostgreSQL, I guess. Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, MongoDB. There are various different options. MongoDB is a non-relational database, no SQL one. So there are a lot of complicated things there. But for now, just know that database is where you store the actual data of the application. So if I have to give an example, okay, Facebook. Facebook, the information that we save, like our name, our profile information, those informations are stored somewhere in the database. Maybe not it may not be straightforward as to how they are stored, but they're stored somewhere in the database. Facebook may not be a good example. I don't know. Anyway, backend concept. So our backend, as I said, application, it is using cost of data and resource sharing between applications. Backend provides the API and frontend uses the API to get data and send data to the backend. Database is the same thing. To data send and receive data is cost save. User go login to login information. Usually full first name, last name. So what is phone number, addresses. Our is stored in your application. That is database. Login sign request IO request response to save so that if somebody needs to go back and check what things happen in a certain day, they can just go and check the logs. So error log save. So we can know error. HTTP and HTTPS are how securely do information get transferred over the network. So this is very common in credit card related information. So just saying HTTPS enables your browser may not even allow you to send credit card information, or will give a warning or error saying you're saying secure, so you cannot send credit card information over this current network. So security is things like user information. Let's say example, I'll give a photo sharing app. Sorry, we upload our photos to some place, and then they're storing that photo. But your stored photo secure to costly publicly because when we share a photo, we only want a specific number of people that should be able to see that photo. So due to photo cost save. So things like that security information or backend development, it can come into effect. Authentication sign publicly login so and other things like that. So login to any permission service and things like that. So what else? Current trends, if you look at the things that are on the rise, TypeScript is very, very popular. TypeScript is JavaScript, but a lot more complicated things there. So for example, JavaScript also to support TypeScript also, but TypeScript provides a lot more strict variable definition, strict types, so that much more clear to use. So a lot of developers prefer to use TypeScript. So they can use JavaScript, sure, but they would prefer to use TypeScript more. Rust, I think maybe 4 or 5 years back, maybe 3 years, Rust introduced Rust is a new programming language, and it's also very popular nowadays. Golang, I personally currently work on a project that uses Golang, and Golang is, I think, one of the most fast-growing programming languages, at least according to stats from GitHub. So Golang is most primarily built for backend development, and it's very built by Google, and is very easy to use. Maybe not easy to use. There are concepts can be a bit confusing initially, but it's like one of the better programming languages to use now. GraphQL is a different way to use APIs. While I think we used to have concepts called REST APIs. Now GraphQL one here the nag concept maybe like three years ago, and this is also on the rise right now. Progressive web apps I think has been around for 7-8 years. Progressive web apps in Costa they are web applications and built using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But when they are installed into a mobile app, they'll work almost exactly like a mobile application, like a native mobile application. So node fixing आउने कुराहरु, file storage access गर्ने कुराहरु, everything there are geolocation access गर्ने कुराहरु, all of those things can be available using a progressive web app. We only need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript concepts, and then we can build our application in them and then use them like native mobile apps. So one example is Twitter.com browser, mobile browser, it gives an option to save to your home screen or something like that. So when that happens, you install to home screen, it comes up like a native application itself. The class HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, beyond the web. So our web desktop application, mobile application. Those are still completely doable using native languages. Like for iOS, we have for iPhone devices we have iOS. For Android devices we have Android Studio and Android language. For desktop we have Xamarin and .NET and whatever else. But JavaScript can also be used for the same kinds of application development. So React Native, I've been saying React a lot in this talk. The same syntax you learn in React, it's a bit different, like the component types are different, but React JSQ, the same thing can be translated over to React Native, and React Native, but the same native mobile, native iOS and Android apps can also be built. You can still use native iOS, native Android, but you can use React Native and use one code base, which can be converted to both to iOS and Android, and they will work exactly like native applications. Native script, you're trying like a competitor to React Native, but not as popular. React Native, as the name suggests, you're saying based on React. Native script saying Angular and Vue languages can be used for native script. Electron saying desktop applications built using JavaScript. Electron saying we can write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it can be installed like a native desktop application. And Proton Native, again, Proton Native is an extension of Electron, but it uses React syntax to build desktop applications. So React motto learn once, write anywhere, something like that. So React you can use the same syntax for web applications, backend applications, mobile applications, and desktop applications. And that's one of the reasons why I would recommend everyone to start with React. But while development nice to we supposed to like the very initial few slides, we have to start with pure HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's it. That's really all I have to say. Thank you. And I do have a few resources here to look into what you can do in order to get started. Like as I said before, options are there. It's just so front-end trends are kind of that. So Node tutorial, Node tutorial counters is running. React tutorial. I would give to give a shout out to Ege.io, which is a video learning tutorial online. Using front-end development collab, one of the best online resources. So even for React and Vue, there are courses online, free courses online to learn React and React Vue and Redux and there are other stuff. Maybe not Angular. I did not really find a good tutorial for Angular, but you can get started there. And I think that's it. Thank you. Are we supposed to continue? Or?
Yeah, sorry, Nishan. Thank you so much. Few questions Nishan, if you could just go through them actually.
Lots of questions, okay.
Yeah, lots of questions. So we're running low on time. We just have 15 more minutes. So Nishan, if you could just answer a couple of them. Ani aru bhyaena bhane chai ni, I'll share the Slack channel ko link where people can just send in their questions, and then the whole team will be answering them, right? So over Nishan, if you could answer a couple of them. Bhyaena bhane chai ni Slack ma hai ta.
All right.
Thanks.
I'm looking at the questions now. Dinesले question soरेको छ नेपालको कन्टेक्स्टमा React versus Vue and Vue.js को future. It really doesn't matter in नेपालको context or not, because React or Vue does not really depend on whether we do here or whether we do outside. But in Nepalma, if you look into like companies that use JavaScript, that do JavaScript, I think React is a lot more popular. So React developers demand is a lot bigger. And Vue.js, you can definitely get started with Vue.js to learn things yourself. I'm not sure if Vue.js is as popular as React in Nepal itself. Future for Vue.js, it's not quite as big as React or Angular, because I think I missed that. Angular was built by developers from Google, and React was built by developers from Facebook. So tinerko backing ekdamai massive छ, support ekdamai massive छ. Vue.js is an open source project, so they're still quite active contributors, but may not have like professional support from in terms of Vue.js. So Vue.js can be very good to get started with, to learn about front-end development itself, but maybe in Nepal and in other places also, React is a much easier option even for the employees and employers to choose for. Okay. Urmila Marazan. Can we use Django with Python data frames as a Django? Can we use JavaScript? Okay. Yes. Python, but saying we serve HTML pages, and HTML pages we still need JavaScript, and we can use any kind of JavaScript we want within that. Python, but we can also serve React-based applications using something like Django, probably. Any server-side languages can be made to use APIs. Yeah, sure. Is it compulsory to learn JavaScript? Can't we relay to HTML CSS for frontend? Maybe for front-end development or web development, HTML CSS matra चाहिँ गरेर ठिक छ, it's fine. But any kind of dynamic कुरा ल्याउनु पर्यो, like app नै बनाउनु पर्यो, static side बनाउँदा is probably not a big deal. But any kind of interactivity ल्याउनु पर्यो, dynamic context ल्याउनु पर्यो, चाहिँ generally a good idea to use JavaScript. You can still use something like PHP, WordPress that may not even have JavaScript related things. But if we still have like a JavaScript library imported, like jQuery, that can do a bunch of things. So probably compulsory, because right now, if you look at Stack Overflow, almost the top programming language right now is JavaScript. If you look at most of the GitHub projects, they have some form of JavaScript already there. And for modern web development, JavaScript web development and front-end development probably cannot work well. So I wouldn't say compulsory, but 99% compulsory, I guess. How do you prefer organized file structure in React? I probably wouldn't want to answer that, because it depends on the kinds of team you have. So kunaiमा चाहिँ views एक ठाउँमा हुन्छ, कुनै ठाउँमा चाहिँ API एक ठाउँमा हुन्छ, कुनै ठाउँमा चाहिँ component levelमै componentले चाहिने सब कुरा एक ठाउँमा हुन्छ, and अर्को component चाहिने ठाउँ एक ठाउँमा हुन्छ. So it depends on the kind of project it is. Mid to large applications को लागि it's fine if you do component wise. So कुनै एउटा components are like login page, everything you need for the login page will be within that structure, and everything you need for your profile page will be in another page. So something like that. But ultimately, your code maintainable doesn't really matter how you structure it, and it needs to generally has the two elements, everything in its own place, or everything based on a component. So it's really fine however you do it. Why don't web browsers make a standard CSS definition for all? Because web browsers do not want to do it, I guess. After rendering engine, Microsoft has Trident, Safari has WebKit and Blink, Chrome has WebKit and Blink, Mozilla has Gecko. And implementation are different. Standardized, CSS को standard चाहिँ एउटा सबठाउँमा छ, but त्यसको implementation is dependent upon the browsers themselves, and they just don't want to follow the same. What can you do? I'm using both Bootstrap and Tailwind on a project. Doesn't make the project bulky? No, it does not. You can use anything you want. If you use like 10 or 15 different CSS libraries, then maybe, but not really. And all these auto prefix extension, cool. Sound, sorry, is the sound a bit lagging? Probably. I don't know. Leave computer audio. Responsive design. The most common screen resolution right now is 1360 by 768. Actually, the most common resolution right now is 1920 by 1080. Nepalma चाहिँ, yes, 1360 by 768 or 720p is the most common. But generally, for the entire world, 1080p is a lot more common. But so reverse side saying, the most common screen resolution right now actually is the mobile screen resolution. Almost every application right now has a mobile something. So Junske website pani mobile ones also. So the most common device, if you want to target, has to be mobile devices, and then you have to target desktop devices. But if you're targeting desktop devices, then depends on your target base. 1360 by 768 also. But generally, 1920 by 1080. 4K is not going to be that common in web development for a very long time. What else? Regarding security, why are government sites so prone to cyber attacks? Because they have very bad architecture. Because they don't build like security first kind of applications. I don't know what to do. Why is there so much focus on immutable data? It doesn't really matter. Immutable gone and about it. If you do React initially the immutable concept. Vue.js and others may not even care about immutable at all. Pure JavaScript, it doesn't even matter if you do immutable or not. Immutable gone, maybe a good reason is it provides predictability. Like we always know what the new data is, and Purano data update it doesn't matter because the Purano data will be discarded, and all the new data is exactly the one that we send. So it doesn't really matter if it is immutable or not. But following a certain principle, for example, React matching, so it's one of the primary things that we need to follow in React because of the way React's rendering works. So that's why immutable JS is a lot popular. Also, immutable JS because it's, I think, built by Facebook themselves. Not sure. So maybe that's why immutable JS is also quite popular. What is the best architecture for SaaS? I don't know. I don't know. Which method do you use? What method would you suggest style components? Actually, let me go back a few slides. I actually don't cover this in the slide here. I actually had a slide for CSS and JS, but I did not cover it because it's a bit more complicated than others. Style components, I think my site I would prefer style components over others because this was CSS like inline rectangle, like how you would write CSS, and it's a lot easier to extend. But any option is easy. CSS modules and style components just to have system which CSS directly .css file rectangles, and that can be imported. JSS is also quite popular. I think usually JSS already inbuilt around or packages. So if you want to do it yourself, style components easier to do. And some libraries like I think Material UI, they already provide JSS inbuilt. So depends on your preference really. And ultimately, a lot of my answers will be depends on your preference. Deno.js, recently version 1 built by the same developer that built Node.js. And I'm excited for Deno.js, but it's still not ready to be, even though version 1 release still not ready to be properly used everywhere because, as I said, Node.js is almost everywhere right now. So Deno.js still needs a lot of time before we're ready to switch over to Deno. I even have a few senior developers here in Leapfrog who have switched their projects to make it compatible with Deno. So it's a good way forward. And Deno principles and the architecture that define is a lot better than Node.js itself, but it's still not ready to be properly used. Native applications and cross-platform applications. त्यो चाहिँ कस्तो भन्दा iOS-मा हामीले कोडिङ गर्दाखेरि एउटा स्पेसिफिक वेमा कोडिङ गर्नुपर्छ स्विफ्ट अर अब्जेक्टिभ सी ल्याङ्ग्वेज युज गर्नुपर्छ एन्ड त्यो बनाएपछि इट क्यान ओन्ली वर्क इन iOS डिभाइसेस एन्ड्रोइडमा चाहिँ जावा गर्नुपर्छ अर एन्ड्रोइड ल्याङ्ग्वेज गर्नुपर्छ एन्ड द्याट विल ओन्ली वर्क इन एन्ड्रोइड डिभाइसेस बट रियाक्ट नेटिभमा चाहिँ हामीले जावास्क्रिप्टमा कोड लेख्ने हो जावास्क्रिप्टमै भ्युजहरू सब बनाउने हो एन्ड द्याट क्यान बी युज इन बोथ एन्ड्रोइड एन्ड iOS सो कुनै एउटा एप्लिकेसन छ इफ यु निड टु ह्याभ इट इन एन्ड्रोइड एन्ड iOS देन बिफोर एन्ड्रोइडको लागि पनि छुट्टै कोड लेख्नु पर्थ्यो एन्ड iOSको पनि छुट्टै कोड लेख्नु पर्थ्यो and then they have to be separately shipped. Now React Native code लेख्यो and that code base can be now code base चाहिँ compile गर्दाखेरि Android मा पनि पाउन मिल्छ and iOS मा पनि लाउन मिल्छ. That's the thing. Flutter, I don't really know much about Flutter, but I think built by Google, not sure. But still, Flutter saying I've heard that it's very good right now, but I personally haven't done much with Flutter. What is meant by rendering in programming? Rendering is what is shown on a website on a page. So keep page ma chahi let's say what do you call it, image carousel, sorry, image slider, sorry, that is one frame that's rendered and if you slide to image slide or something else or can to multiple frame or render bhayera you slide one by one one slide bhayera next image ma aunyo. So that's what rendering means. So our example the one I gave before, list of users fetch garyo initially loading ke huncha hola, like loading list of users हुन्छ होला and then load भइसकेपछि चाहिँ त्यो list of users render हुन्छ. So that what that means is list of users are added to the component to the view itself. What are your thoughts on Atomic.js? It's the concept itself came very recently, so not sure I know a lot about it. Do you prefer testing React app from the start or after completing a chunkable component? Depends on what testing means, I guess. Components cannot be tested if they're not completely built. And I'm not sure I understand the question really. Okay, I think, is that it? So when using React.js with Django, we think them as two independent entities and not use templating provided by Django. Yes, Django provides the page where things to be rendered, and we inject React into it so that it can be rendered there, I think. And I think that's it. So REST API will be generated using Django. I mean, Django can be used for REST APIs also.
Okay, I guess that is it, Nishan.
Yep. One more question is there finally. I think this is the last one. Can you explain the whole testing React in general? So testing in JavaScript depends on what you're really testing. So React is a UI rendering application, a UI rendering framework. So UI testing in React is usually what we call snapshot testing. Because we build a component and we render it once. And you render end result, so snapshot, not like an image of it, but more like compile bhayera kasto HTML like syntax generate huncha. And then when we're adding components to it, when we're changing things in there, when we're changing things like the data it shows, we compare with the previous snapshot and see if the properties have changed. If they have changed, then maybe we need to update the tests themselves. If they haven't, then maybe it's fine. And then there are just things like unit level testing, which are to React, the things that React uses, whether they themselves are tested them or not. So that is independent of React testing itself. So there's not quite a lot of resources you get when you say React testing, but usually you use something like Jest, which is a testing library, and that provides snapshot testing for React. There are other options too. All right, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nishan. So before we end this session, I've sent you guys a feedback form. Chat ma alikati scroll garnu bhayo bhane dekhनुहुन्छ. Please, before you leave, just fill that out so that we can improve on, or like, we've also got questions about what would you want next, because your session your sessions is the 5th and last one, but we are hoping to have more sessions. We'll keep you posted on social media, so please follow us there also. और कुछ चाहिए नहीं, but before we go, like always, can everyone please turn on their videos so that we can take a group selfie, right? So thank you guys. Wow. Few more. Da 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 da. Okay. Nice smiles. Great to see you guys. Sweet. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese.